Thank you, and welcome to everyone. I'd also like to welcome Brad's family, Julie, Ryan, and Reese. Welcome to Toronto. I've known Brad for a long time. I've known him from afar. I've always heard about his ability as a hockey person. His assessments of players, his leadership skills. I've gotten to know him, and you know, as we've worked together, as we've worked in the league but not together, and always really liked him and admired him for the qualities that he brings. But over the last little while, getting to spend some time with Brad in person has really confirmed with me what a lot of my colleagues and friends say, that he treats people well. He's a smart hockey person. He's an experienced manager. He's a good manager of people. And I just think that we're really excited to have him come here. I think it was an added bonus that Brad has not only had experience with the Coyotes, but also has had experience in a Canadian market. And again, like I said, as the more we talked, the more time we spent together, I just thought that Brad would be an excellent fit for Toronto to help us get to the next level. So I'd like to introduce Brad Treliving as the 18th general manager in Toronto Maple Leafs history. And over to Brad.
Thanks, Brendan. A little warm in here. There's a turnout. They told me you guys follow the game over here. So first of all, I just want to thank Brendan and the entire Toronto Maple Leafs ownership group, MLSE. It's been a great process getting to know Brendan, as we said earlier on at the beginning. Regardless how it goes, I think in this game, anytime you can form and create and build relationships, it's important. So regardless of whatever the outcome was, as Brendan knows, we've known each other a long time, but never really spent a lot of time. We joked, a good player that we had back in the day, Rafi Torres, we had in Phoenix, and in Brendan's former life, I was spending a lot of time with Brendan, with Rafi there for a little bit of time. But so thank you to Brendan, thank you to everybody. Before I go too much further, I first want to make a couple of comments of Calgary. First of all, the city, the fans of Calgary. It was our home for 9 years. Raised our kids there. It's a very special place to us. The people are very special. The city is very special. And it'll always have a warm place in our heart. I got the pleasure to work for Murray Edwards, the entire Flames ownership group. Murray's a great owner, has been a great mentor to me. And John Bean, again, a good friend, a great professional mentor. Don Maloney, who's been a close friend of mine in the business for a long time. They're in great hands there, and I wish Connie all the success in the world as he takes over the manager job. Most importantly, the players and staff. I get close to the people I work with. I believe that you don't manage these days. Some do, some may. You don't manage from an office up in the building. You manage with the people. You're shoulder to shoulder with the people, and the group there, the players, the staff I'm close with to this day and will be for the rest of our lives. So to them, good luck. I wish them all the very best, except for a couple of games a year. Now to Toronto. You know, I've seen people sit in the seat before and they talk about it's Toronto. And until you're here, I don't think you really understand it. As we were going through this process with Brendan and we're talking to my family and my girls and sort of the close network that that I rely on and lean on, we kept coming back to it's the Leafs. And you guys are all, you live it every day. From the outside, we don't get to live it, but there's a special feeling when you come in here as a visitor, when you come in here scouting, when you come in here as when you were young as a fan. It's the Leafs. It means something. And so to me, I sit in front of you today excited, humbled, looking at this as a great opportunity, but also know this is a great responsibility. There's a responsibility to the fans, the people that follow this team, the people that work here, but our players. You know, to me, that's where we want to get to. I've got a responsibility to that group here to help them get to the level that we're trying to attain to. the real draw at the end of the day, when you look at all the things surrounding this place, and it's a special place, the draw is the team. We're hockey people at the end of the day. And this is a really good team. It's led by world-class players. It's hard to get talent. They've got talent. Like I said, I get to watch this from a far lens. To get to work with these athletes is going to be very, very special. I know there's been heartache and there's been some frustration in terms of our of where we've been in the playoffs lately. It's a hard league, but this team has put themselves in a position, and we're going to try to keep putting ourselves in a position to keep knocking on the door, keep knocking on the door, keep knocking on the door, and eventually push through. So, again, thank you to Brendan. Thank you for everyone for showing up. I'm excited. We want to get through this stuff and get to work. So thank you very much, and look forward to any questions you may have.
Thanks, gentlemen. Just raise your hand. We'll start with Terry here.
Sorry. Oh, hey, Brad. Yeah, Terry Coach of the Toronto Sun. Welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
I might as well get this started off the hop. You mentioned world-class players. Have you had a chance yet to talk to Austin Matthews or Judd Moldaver, and how important is that negotiation, if you will, to get going here?
Well, thanks, Terry.
It's sort of July 1, I guess.
I'm glad we waited so long to get to that topic.
You did say world-class players. I think we knew who you were getting at.
You know what? I've had a chance to communicate. I communicated with a few players. It's been a busy couple of days. I communicated with Austin via text. I know Judd. I've got a strong relationship with Judd. You know, there's a great personal relationship, but Judd's excellent at what he does. You'll find from me, Terry, we're not going to get into any public discourse about contracts. Obviously, we know where these contracts are at. Austin is one of the elite players in the world. You know, we're not talking about a good player in the league. We're talking about an elite player in the world. Getting to Austin is a priority, but outside of the contract stuff, number one is just getting to build that relationship. You know, it's not walking down and trying to arm wrestle about contracts. It's getting down and getting Austin me getting a chance to meet him, but more importantly, having Austin get a chance to meet me, know what we're about, and just talk a little bit. So that's priority number one. We know all the things as it relates to all the players in their contract situations, and the timing and all the challenges ahead of us. But we're prepared to get after it. So I'm excited to not only get a chance to meet him, but thrilled to be able to work with him.
Dave.
Hey, Brad. Dave McCarthy, NHL.com. What's your perspective on the job that Sheldon Keefe has done? Have you had a chance to communicate with Sheldon since you took the job? What's your approach in that standpoint?
Yeah, I have. I have had a chance to communicate with Sheldon. I didn't, you know, I joked with him a little bit on the phone. I don't have a relationship with Sheldon. We spoke a couple of times years ago, but I've had a chance to talk to him. I'm going to get with him. You know, there's a lot of things that are priorities. Sheldon is as well. And as I said to him, it's a little unique situation, right? We can call it whatever we want, right? We're all big boys here. You know, there's been a change. You know, he's in a unique situation. But that's the business. My outside lens of Sheldon, I look at a team. Was it 115 last 2 years as a full-time coach? 115 points, 111 points. I think he's a really good coach. My view is, determining whether a guy's good, bad, or indifferent, you have to work with him. You have to get to know him. So we're going to sit down and we're going to go through it. I'm coming in with no preconceived notions. I went to Calgary 9 years ago. Bob Hartley was there. Didn't have a relationship with Bob. Bob coached. I think he was the coach of the year my first year in Calgary. So I think Sheldon has done a lot of really, really good things. I look at how a group of really skilled players has gotten better at, you know, in checking and defending and doing those things that you need to win. So we're going to sit down and we're going to have a thorough process and try to do it as quickly as possible and come to a conclusion.
A lot of the focus for this team the last, I guess, 7 years has been that core four group of players, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. How open are you to the idea of making a big move to change the culture here of this team?
Yeah, you always hear these words, you know, big words, culture, and I sometimes think it gets overused and overplayed. The good things here is we got really good players, okay? you look at where these players are drafted, right? You just have to pick the number where they're drafted. There's a lot of pain to get good players. So that having those players excites me. And like I said, they're world-class players. We're going to review everything. You know, I want to, stress strongly, I'm not about coming in and making a statement, right? You can throw a body under the tarmac and it might look good for a headline, but are you getting any better? At the end of the day, it's about getting better. And just being different doesn't necessarily make you better. The other thing I'll say on that is, and again, I'm coming in from an outside lens. You know, this idea of the core four and all those types of things, my job is to protect them, right? It's to protect them. And I'm first fiercely protective of my players. But this can't be about the core four. This is about the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not about 4 players, not about 2, it's not about 1. It's about the 23 guys that we're going to have in this organization. So I understand the spotlight's bigger here. I understand we're so fortunate to have all you people that care greatly about this team because of the fan base we have. But it's about the Leafs. And the success of this team or whatever challenges we have isn't because of 4 guys or 2 guys or 1 guy. It's about the group. And for a manager coming in, I'm pretty lucky to have the talent that those 4 represent, as well as everybody else on this team.
But you're not opposed to a big move?
We will look at all things.
Brendan, Brad's your 3rd GM. You might have a 3rd coach, depending on what happens to Sheldon. I'm just wondering how much responsibility you shoulder or bear for one playoff series win in 9 years, and how much pressure you're feeling from below or above on a personal level after nearly a decade and limited playoff success.
Yeah, I felt pressure from the first day I took the job till today. I feel it every day. I've come in with a responsibility to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs in the very beginning, to make us an organization that was capable of winning, an organization that our fans appreciate, and sometimes along the way you do have to make changes. So, this is not about whether or not I'm suddenly feeling pressure. I've always felt pressure, and I will. That's one of the attractions of why I came to Toronto in the first place, and why I've done what I've done throughout my entire career, whether it was as a player or taking on responsibilities at the NHL. So I think that my job has always been, whether it was in year 1 or year 3 or now at the conclusion of year 9, is what can we do to become better? And that's always been my North Compass.
Hey, Brad, it's Matt Larkin here with dailyfaceoff.com. I'm just wondering, are you able to confirm if there will be any restrictions on your involvement in the draft, just based on any overlap with your time in Calgary?
Hi, Matt.
I can answer that. There were some restrictions imposed by the Calgary Flames, but we're not going to go into those details. I will say that I've talked to Brad about that. We have an excellent head scout in Wes Clark. We have an excellent scouting team. We pick in the 1st, 5th, and 6th round. They are still doing their job. They are preparing. That part won't change. We have the utmost confidence in our scouting staff, but I won't go into those details.
Brad, Kevin McGrant here, Toronto Star. Nice to meet you again, sort of. So, even Kyle Dubas in his final press conference here referenced you, that trade with Florida, as a big moment, something to be admired, a risky move, something you had to do. Can you walk us through that trade? Like, do you have any regrets with that trade with Florida in the final and Calgary missing? I mean, I know Calgary had more points than Florida, but still, can you kind of walk us through that trade and your thought process and your thoughts on it now, a year later almost?
Sure. Well, Chucky, who I'm very close to, he's like a son to me. He reminds me all the time that, his success always gets my name brought up, right? So he says, "You're welcome." It was unique. Every situation, every team, every year has got unique circumstances. Matthew, as I said, came to us, and I'm not going to go blow by blow on it, Kevin, but he came to us last year, which I was appreciative of. I'll never fault the player, but said, it's time for me to move. I'm not looking to sign long term here. So you go into the market. Now there were some challenges, no question. You're playing with felt like a 2 and a 3 in your hand, and everybody else has got a pair of aces. So we worked hard. We made an organizational decision where our team was at in terms of the growth of our team and at the development of our team, that we wanted to look at opportunities to fit within the window, that competitive window we're in. So we worked at it. And I know, listen, Matthew's a great young player. And we knew from the day moving 25-year-old top players we never wanted to move Matthew Tkachuk. This was not something that, let's be very clear, that I said, woke up one day and thought, let's move Matthew Tkachuk. Circumstances presented themselves. You deal with them as best you possibly can. He's a top player. He's a wonderful player. That's the first chapter of that trade. Jonathan, McKenzie, the pick. There's a prospect involved. We'll see. Time will dictate and tell how all things play out. But every time you're going to have challenges every year, and you just deal with them as best you possibly can.
Brendan, after Kyle moved on, there was some discussion in the market about how much autonomy the GM has to make moves and make them quickly in this structure. And now Kyle takes on the president's job in Pittsburgh today. Can you just give us a sense of how that works here in Toronto, how much autonomy the GM has?
I mean, I've always believed that in process, and I've always believed that a general manager should have a good, strong process. And we've been lucky here in Toronto, whether the two people I hired, which was Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Dubas, had good process. They drew information from the people around them. But ultimately, the decision has to be made by the general manager, and that's how I've always operated. That's how I'll continue to operate. I think that Brad is a collaborative person. I think he's got, I think he's looking forward to meeting our staff and so many of the resources that we've built up here in Toronto. But I think he also has, people in the hockey world that he relies on as well. And so Brad and our relationship will not be all that different than the very good one that Kyle and I had. But ultimately, I really do feel that that the role and the responsibility has to ultimately come from the general manager, so that doesn't change.
Hey, Brad. David Alter with the Hockey News. Nice to meet you. I'm wondering if you've had an opportunity to kind of look at who you want to bring in from an AGM standpoint, or maybe some other support staff, or are you kind of waiting for maybe some of the other decisions to kind of fall before making those kind of decisions?
Sorry, from an assistant manager?
Yeah, like anyone that you've worked with in the past that you've already identified as someone who you're going to bring in.
Well, first, I should have mentioned earlier, I think, one of the real draws for me is we talked about the people here. That goes off the ice too. Brandon Pridham, I've known Brandon a long time, going back to, I thought we had to mail him a check when I was in Arizona. We felt like he was on the payroll when he was working for the league, because we were owned by the league. But so we leaned on him all the time. I said, hey, this is all from the same mothership here. And he's to me, in my mind, one of the very best, if not the best, at what he does in the league. So, when you come into a job, I think it's really important. It's easy to sit up here and say, we got all these problems, but I'm the beneficiary of the people that came before me. Kyle Dubas is a very close friend. We have a very good relationship. I think he's extremely smart. I think he's talented at what he does. And like I said, he's of the manager group, he's a close confidant. He's left me some really good pieces. On the ice, off the ice. Before him, Lou Lamoriello. Before him, Dave Nonis, I think. Before him, Brian Burke. They all have their fingerprints on this team. There's players from Berkey's age era in terms of Morgan Riley. So it's a roundabout way of saying part of the draw here is the work that people have done before me. Most recently, Kyle, who's really good at what he does, and I'm the beneficiary of that. And that falls off the ice. Now I'm going to sit with those people, and we're going to have discussions, and we're going to find out specific roles. If there's areas that we can help ourselves and look at people to bring in, we may do. But again, I think we've got really talented people here. Now I got to get to know them.
Hi, Brad. You sit here on June 1st, and it's obviously such a big month on the hockey calendar. I'm just wondering over these next days and weeks what your biggest priorities are.
Well, hi, Chris. I was going through this the other day when Brendan and I were talking. It's hard to say. There's a lot of priorities, right? So that number one, there seem to be a lot at the number one spot. So obviously we got some contractual issues that we're going to deal with, and we're going to build those relationships. We've got Sheldon's situation. We've got to get to know the staff. We've got a draft to prepare for. There's the communication amongst the managers community, right? I'm a little bit behind here right now, right? People have been talking and figuring out what they want to do. So we'll go pedal down here pretty quick. This is not the dating game. We're going to get right into pushing hard here. So there's a lot to get done. Again, we've got a lot of people here. We got a good staff. We got an experienced staff. So I'm going to lean on them. But number one, I got to get out and see Austin. Number two is number 1A is the other contractual issues. We got a coach that we've got to get some clarity and meet with. So, I don't by saying one's more important than the other, you're downgrading everything. But there's a lot to do, and the clock is ticking, as they say.
Hey, Brad, Lance Ormer from the Toronto Sun. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Gio and Brody and what kind of a resource they might be for you as you come in?
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see those guys. Gio, it's good to see him still playing at 75. Not a lot of guys do. And yeah, I was with them a long time. They're good. They're good men. They're good players. They're good people. They've got good families. So, I was been texting a little bit with Gio, and it'll be good to connect with them. Like I said, I don't. There's a few people here. Luke Shen, I know a little bit, right? We've got a little bit of a relationship with. So getting to know the players, that's the important thing to me. Like I said, this is not, you don't manage from an office anymore. You got to get to know them. You got to know what drives them. But those are two good men there.
Congratulations, Brad. Luke, Fox Sportsnet.
Thanks, Luke.
You're talking about the talent of this team from afar in terms of roster construction. Why hasn't this group gotten over the hump, in your opinion?
You know what, Luke? There's a few things, and before I get too, it's a little bit premature, and it's not a way of dodging the question. I always feel in the same way when I went into Calgary. There's an external lens. Until you get behind the curtain, it's you got to know all the reasons why. Number one, and it's not a, it's a motherhood answer, but it's the truth. It's hard to win, right? Like, we're looking at a final here right now with two really good teams, but one of the teams was a Pittsburgh win away from not making the playoffs, right? It's tight. The margins are thin. It's hard to win, and I know that sounds. People want the answers. We're going to try to get the answers, but it's hard to win. What I've liked about this team from afar is and I refer to it as we already, but they've got lots of skill. They've got lots of talent. But each year, and for me, like when I look at from our data, how we looked at this team, I mean, it was an elite team 5-on-5 offensively. When you look at its chances against, so I think it was second in chances for. I think we're 14th in chances against, but their disrupt percentage in terms of checking, to me that's checking, it was second. So and again I point back to the coach. He's gotten top players to check, and at the end of the day, checking, you can't win until you check, and you need talent, you need skill, but that skill's got to play at both ends of the ice, and I've seen an evolution of that. But it's hard to win. It's hard to win. Beyond that, I think, we just got to dig in and we got to get familiar with it and find solutions to the issues that we got.
Brendan, about a half hour before we sat down here, your former GM was announced as, the president of Pittsburgh. He'll be debuted an hour from now. What do you think of that timing?
Well, I think they're like us. I don't think it was intentional timing. I've been in contact with the CEO of Fenway, Sam Kennedy. He and I are very close. We've talked over the last week several times about Kyle. So I think they need to get to work as well. Fully endorsed Kyle. I thought he told Sam that he would be great for their organization, and I'm very happy for him.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to pause here for a moment. We're going to do a photo op, and then thank you very much.
Thanks.